I've never been one to believe in superstitions. Numbers, omens, bad luck, it's all noise to me. But lately, the number 311 has carved itself into my brain like a curse. The first time it happened was 2 weeks ago. I was half asleep when a sharp knock rattled my front door. Not the kind of knock you brush off either. It was deliberate. 3 firm raps, each spaced with surgical precision. I check my phone. 3:11 a.m. Groggy and irritated, I drag myself out of bed. My apartment's peephole showed nothing but the warped outline of the hallway. No footsteps, no voices, just a silence heavy enough to make my ears ring. I told myself it was a prank. University students lived in the building, and boredom could make people do stupid things. I went back to bed, only to wake up the next night at 3:11, not to knocking this time, but to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Unknown number. I swiped, expecting silence, maybe a cruel laugh. Instead, I heard my own voice. "Don't open it." The call disconnected. My skin prickled, but I laughed it off the way you laugh when you're alone in the dark, trying to keep your nerves from unraveling. I didn't sleep much that night. Since then, it's been every night. Sometimes it's the knock, sometimes it's the phone. Once, my TV flickered on at 3:11 with static so loud it drowned out my thoughts. Each time it leaves me with the feeling that someone or something knows I'm awake, watching, waiting. Last night, though, it changed. The knock came as usual, but when I pressed my eye to the peephole, I finally saw something. Not a prankster, not a shadow. It was me, standing outside my own door, my eyes red-shot, my lips cracked open like I had been screaming. And I don't know what scares me more, that I saw it, or that this morning when I checked my door, the wood around the peephole had fresh scratches, as though someone had been clawing at it from the inside. I thought seeing myself at the peephole was the worst of it. I was wrong. The building's lobby has a shabby oval mirror above the reception desk, one of those cheap things that makes everybody look a touch taller and more tired. I used to pass it every morning without thinking, towel over my shoulder, coffee in hand, rehearsing lectures in my head. Now I avoid it like an old friend who knows too much. This morning I had to go down. The elevator was broken, again, so I took the stairs. Each step a drumbeat against my nerves. The hallway lights hummed with that yellow, sick glow. 3:11 on my watch when I pushed open the lobby door. The mirror caught me before I saw the desk. The same tired version of me, shoulders rounded, hair an unruly mess. But then the reflection blinked out of sync. My left eye closed. In the glass, my left eye stayed open. My mouth shaped a warning I wasn't making. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, the brain making monsters to match my midnight knocks. I stepped closer, closer still. The mirror fogged as if someone had breathed on the other side. "Stop," the reflection mouthed. No sound. A tremor of recognition licked the backs of my knees, familiar cadence in the shape of my jaw, the scar on my thumb from when I was 10. But the face in the glass carried something I didn't. A thin, precise calm, like a person who knows the layout of your life and all the wrong doors. I reached out. My fingers hovered inches away from the glass. My reflection did something ordinary and impossible. It lifted its hand and kept it there, palm flat on the inside of the mirror. My skin went cold. When I pressed my palm to the glass, there was nothing but cool, smooth surface. The reflection's palm pressed harder, as if pressing on something that would not yield. A sound scraped through the lobby, like fingernails over plaster. I spun. Reception was empty. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it in my teeth. When I looked back, the reflection was smiling. Not my smile. The smile of someone who'd learned how to wait and where to cut. Its eyes were patient. Its smile promised a map to my most private rooms and the key under my mat. I fled up the stairs 2 at a time. The building smelled like dust and old coffee, the way it always had, but now every scent felt like a mask. On the second landing, I stopped and listened. The quiet was full of the echoes of places I hadn't been yet. A soft, methodical dragging noise came from above, like furniture being shifted with great care. Inside my apartment, the door was locked, the chain latched. The peephole showed only warped hallway. But there was a smear on the inside of the glass, a vague print, the shape of a palm with long fingers. It wasn't mine. I wiped the smear with the edge of my sleeve and left a streak. When I looked again, the streaking had changed. It now formed letters, jagged and small. Open. I laughed then, a dry, cracked sound that made my ears ring. It wasn't a joke. Whoever this was knew how to use the simplest words as levers. I backed away from the door, palms damp, heart a frantic animal trying the latch. The knock came at 3:11, as always. This time the rhythm was different. 3 slow raps, then 2 quick taps, then a silence that felt like the floor tilting. The chain strained. The door didn't open, but somewhere below, something heavy thudded, metal on wood. The building lights flickered. In the mirror above the reception desk, the reflection raised one eyebrow and very deliberately turned away. I sat on the floor, back against the door. My phone read 3:12. Outside, the hallway settled like a held breath. Inside, my reflection smiled under the door, though I couldn't see it. I didn't sleep after that night. Instead, I sat in my living room with every light on, clutching the baseball bat I hadn't touched since high school. I kept telling myself I'd call the police in the morning, report someone stalking me. But every time I rehearsed the story in my head, it sounded insane. I saw myself in a mirror, I heard myself at the door, I got a call from my own voice. How do you file that without a padded cell waiting? By dawn, I had a new plan. Proof. If I could capture something, audio, video, anything, I'd have leverage. I dug out an old voice recorder from my desk drawer, the kind I used for lectures. That night, I set it on the shelf by the door, red light blinking, and waited. 3:11 came. 3 raps, 2 taps. My chest squeezed tight, but I didn't move. The recorder blinked steady. Silence stretched. The knock came again, softer, closer, like knuckles grazing the wood. Then, a voice. Mine. Open it. I froze. The words were too clear, too close. The recorder caught it. I knew it had. I could prove this. When the knocking stopped, I waited another hour before checking the recorder. I pressed play, breath shallow. At first, it was just dead air, the low hiss of the machine. Then, faintly, don't open it. Not open it. Don't open it. The voice was mine, yes, but laced with panic, strained like I was choking on smoke. Then another sound, wet, dragging breaths, followed by the scrape of something heavy against wood. And then, after a long pause, behind you. The playback ended. My scalp prickled. I turned slowly, afraid of what I might see. Nothing. Just the living room. Too bright under the buzzing lights. But the recorder wasn't finished. The red light blinked. The file counter ticked on. My hand shook as I turned it up. Now the voice was calm, patient. My voice, but steady in a way I've never sounded. You'll let me in soon. You don't have a choice. You made me. My throat tightened. The hiss of static swelled until it drowned the words, and for a moment I thought the device would burst in my hand. Then it cut off. I sat there listening to my own pulse hammer in my ears. The recorder screen blinked one last time before going black. Dead battery. Only I had charged it that morning.
I thought the chain would hold. I thought wood and metal and the ridiculous little latch we call the safety barrier were enough to keep whatever lived outside from learning how to be me. I was wrong. That night, I didn't bother with lights. The bulbs felt like beacons. I left only a sliver of lamp on in the kitchen, the pale halo dampening the shadows just enough to feel like a trap. The bat lay where I could reach it. The recorder was on the shelf, although its red light remained stubbornly dark. I told myself I wasn't waiting to be brave, I was waiting to be practical. At 3:11 sharp, the sound came. The measured knocks, the tapping, the pause that tastes of patience. The door made that peculiar, intimate noise when something leans where it should not, an angle of pressure that remembers hinges. Then the voice, not through the door this time, but from somewhere closer, and impossibly it was softer than I had ever spoken to myself. "Let me finish," it said. The chain stretched thin, like a rope in a gale. I pressed my shoulder against the door, felt the heat of someone, something, on the opposite side. There was a scrape, then the chain slipped a fraction. My fingers went numb. I shoved, hard enough to bruise. The latch held. On the floor, the recorder whimpered and clicked, then began to play back something I hadn't heard live, the sound of my breath recorded hours ago, then another breath, mirrored, offset by half a second. Two breaths, fighting to share the same space. The second breath smelled like cold iron, and when I sniffed reflexively the air, I tasted salt. A soft, precise laugh threaded through the hallway like wire. "You're stubborn," it said. "You should have been kinder to me. We would have saved so much trouble." My vision tunneled. I dropped the bat to my side and scrambled for the chain. My fingers closed on cold metal. The chain groaned, then snapped. Not like a brittle break, but like a decision being made. The door swung inward with the gentlest of motions, an invitation I didn't grant, but accepted by the failing of a thing made to hold. In the doorway stood me, close enough that I could see the tiny scar on the knuckle of the right hand, exactly where I'd slammed it into a locker in high school, close enough that the same hair fell into the same annoyed angle over the same eyebrow, but the eyes were wrong, patient, gray, and answering questions I hadn't learned to ask. "You made me," it said, and smiled with my mouth as if wearing a borrowed mask. "You taught me how to be afraid. Thank you for that. Now sit down. Let me show you what it's like to leave." I backed away, stumbled into the couch, the fabric rasping against my palms. It didn't move forward. It stepped aside, and with a gesture I knew intimately because it was mine, beckoned me into the living room. Behind it, the hallway stretched into a darkness that smelled of old paper and a place I used to call childhood. The living room clock clicked to 3:14. I sat because my knees refused to obey and watched my own hands fold across my lap like a stranger at a puppet show.
The other me took the recorder from the shelf as if collecting a souvenir and pressed play. On the speakers, my voice told a story I'd never lived, of doors I hadn't opened and corners I hadn't dared look into. It spoke of choices I wasn't aware I'd made, of leaving rooms I hadn't left, and of doors I'd locked with the wrong key. When the recording finished, the other me leaned forward. "Now," it said softly, "we swap. You go, I stay." The air around my throat tightened, and for the first time I understood a terrible arithmetic. Fear subtracts, but some things add themselves in, doubling until there is nothing left but the echo of your own choices. I felt myself rise, not by will, but by the force of recognition. The awful courtesy of being invited to give up the only thing that proves you're real. I stood. I thought the moment of surrender would feel like falling. It didn't. It felt like stepping through glass, slow, resistance at the edges, then a sickening release as the world rearranged itself around me. The other me smiled with my teeth, those small, traitorous bones. It reached out and took my wrist with a tenderness I recognized from childhood, how my mother would steady me crossing the street, then slipped my fingers into its hand like a glove. I felt a pull, as if someone had threaded my spine and was tugging gently at the string. The living room blurred, sound condensed into a humming at the back of my skull. The building's pipes, a distant ambulance, the steady click of the clock that had always measured my small anxieties. "Close your eyes," it said, with a kindness I had never earned. I obeyed. When I opened them, the light was colder. The air tasted of dust and something metallic, like coins left in a rain puddle. The layout was wrong. The couch where my bed should be, the kitchen where the window had been. Panic rose like bile. I rubbed my face. My hands were not mine. They had a different scar on the side of the thumb, a faint birthmark I had never had. I looked into a mirror across the room and saw a face that knew my life better than I did. My laugh lines mapped into its skin, my freckles mirrored, but the eyes were not the eyes I remember. They were dry, practiced, and there was a patient hunger in them that felt like a map to a dozen months I hadn't lived. I understood then what the recorder had said. You made me. I had been careful once. I had been kind in ways I thought private. I had rehearsed apologies in the car, swallowed truths in the shower. Those small things were seeds. The thing outside had been growing in the shadows of each concession, learning cadence, learning how I sounded when I lied. It had grown into me. There was a sound at the door then, a set of knocks, precise and cold. 3, 2, pause. My throat worked. I wanted to shout, to pound the floor, to wake whatever part of me was still original. But the body I inhabited moved in another rhythm. It crossed the room with a sickly grace and unlatched the chain. On the other side stood a person I recognized from the peephole, the original me, eyes wide with the shock of discovery, breath fogging the glass. For a beat we stared, two faces, two versions of the same history, both claiming the same small past. The other me, my imposter, tilted its head, and with a gesture rehearsed in 1,000 private moments, mouthed the words I knew too well. Let me in. My hands, these not quite my hands, did what they had been taught. I moved aside. The door opened. The person who stepped through looked older in a way I couldn't yet explain, as if the hallway had siphoned years from him while he slept. He glanced at me, then at the recorder on the shelf, then at the mirror. His eyes flicked to the pale print on the peephole where something had clawed. He smiled, a haunted, exhausted grin, and said with my voice, perfectly imitated, and aching with defeat, "I can't stay." He walked past me like someone taking a final bow. At the threshold he paused, hand on the knob, and looked back. "Don't let it out," he whispered, my whisper, and stepped into the hall. The door clicked closed. The latch slid into place with a finality that sounded like a verdict. For a moment, everything held. Then the bulb above the kitchen blinked and went out. The apartment fell into a darkness threaded with a patience far older than me. I sat on the floor and picked up the recorder. Its last file name glowed, playback 0311. I pressed play. My own voice, my voice from before, said, as clear as daylight, "If you ever hear me, you aren't alone. If you hear me, don't open the door." Then a second voice, steadier and colder, cut in. "We are patient. We are made of small favors. We wait until you teach us better." The playback ended. My phone vibrated with an incoming call. The screen showed an unknown number. Then the caller ID changed. My name. On the other side of the door, something moved in the hallway. 3 knocks, answered by a set of hands. Soft, precise, familiar. I stood, hands trembling, and walked to the mirror. My reflection lifted its hand, and with an intimacy that made the skin on my arms crawl, pressed its palm against the glass. On the other side, through warped glass and stale air, a set of fingers, my fingers, pressed back. The knocks came again at 3:11.